All right, first thing that we see when we open up Revit is recent files or recent page. Then the first segment here is model. In here, we can open up our projects. The format of our projects is RVT. We can either open up a project or we can create a new one. We can choose in between the templates that we've selected before. Then again, the same goes for families. We can either create a new one or we can choose from the families that we have. Oh, and by the way, families are some specific objects which we can utilize in our projects. I mean, objects such as different types of fittings, mechanical equipments, plumbing equipments and features, and so many other things. Now, overall, these families are kind of the same as AutoCAD blocks. The only difference is they work quite more intelligently. I mean, unlike AutoCAD blocks, they are actually able to transfer specific infos, datas, and details. Now, to start our work, I'm going to click on New here, and then I'm going to select System Default Metric or UK Piping, and then I'm going to enter the viewport. By default, our viewport would be something like this. All right. Just remember, based on the template that we select, let me just do this again. This time I'm going to go with architectural. And then another one. This time systematic. All right, pay attention here. This is important. Based on the template that we select, the settings that we have in Project Browser might differ. For example, if I go ahead and let me collapse everything. As you can see here, I got everything like mechanical, electrical, plumbing. All right. However, if I go back to the architectural templates, we're not going to see any settings related to mechanical, electrical, or plumbing. We only have some architectural levels. And in piping, we would only see some plumbing related settings. See? So again, the settings in Project Browser would be customized based on the discipline that you are working on. And if you ever wanted to work on a specific discipline, you need to be aware of this point. And you can actually go ahead and you can say customize the settings that you want in your Project Browser window here. I mean, based on what you need in your projects. Okay, so this was a very important point which most of the beginners think of as a problem. Anyway, back to our viewport. Again, when we open up our template, we would see this toolbar containing some tools, items, and tabs. Now I'm going to go ahead and reactivate all the use interfaces that we had. All right, as you can see, we have some tabs in System tab. As you can see, we have different segments, piping, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and then in here we have the piping tools. It seems like not much, but they contain so many techniques and points which we're going to go through later on. All right, up here we have Quick Access Toolbar. It contains the most useful items. We can actually move this down here. Then we have the Properties window as well as the Project Browser. And I'm going to set these two windows, these two useful windows, next to each other. And if you ever close it down, you can do a right click and reopen it like this. Now, Properties window has different segments. For example, Type Selector here, then the Filter segment. Then all of these are the instance properties. And here we got the type properties. Now, for example, if you select a pipe here, in Type Selector, for example, we can see different types that we have for this pipe. And we can select one, for example, this one. Then we can start drawing a sketch for it. Let me just draw a schematic sketch for this. Okay. Now I'm going to select another type, PVC, for example. Then again, another sketch. All right. Change the type again. And then it's sketch. And basically, this is what Type Selector does for us. Now, from instance properties, you can actually go ahead and go through some settings regarding the selected object in your viewport. So again, only the selected object. For example, if I change the diameter here, only the diameter of the selected object would change. Or as another example, if I change the fitting here, this would happen. All right, next segment that we have is filter. If we get on with our selection using a click drag, in other words, if we select multiple objects, what is going to happen is that in instance properties window, we would only see some settings that are common in between all of the selected objects. But let's say I only want to see pipe parameters. I can select pipe from this filter here, filter list. And then again, I can, for example, change up the the diameter, here because we have fittings as well. First, I need to specify, for example, symmetry. And then as you can see, the system change. Then in our next segment, we had type properties or edit type. When we click on it, we would see some additional and actually very important settings for the objects. For example, these are pipe related settings. Then if we were working on fittings, these are fitting related settings. And basically for each object, we have different and specific settings. Just remember, if you modify something using edit type window, the modification would be applied on the whole type because you're not working on instance properties anymore. This is edit type. This is different. Okay, next up we have project browser. Through this window, you can actually check your workflow or your project procedure, whatever you want to call it. And you can do it through a list of what you have done so far in your project, and it'll get even more complete with you moving on in your project. Now, this list might contain, for example, different levels, different details, elevations, sections, schedules, different sheets, and basically whatever you do in your projects. And you can enter each one by clicking on them and then have a 3D view like this. See, this is a 3D view of this part. And after we're done, we can just close them down like this. Now, when you are working in 3D view, you can use your mouse scroller to pan your objects. And then using the mouse scroller and shift, you can do an orbiting or rotation. However, in two-dimensional views, such as plans, for example, shift does not do anything because, in fact, we don't have rotation or orbiting here. We can only pan or we can zoom in or zoom out. Then by clicking on each object, it'll be selected. Unlike in AutoCAD, you cannot add selections like this. So only one object would be selected with each click each time. And if you want to select multiple objects simultaneously, you should hold the Control key. And for deselecting them, you can use the Shift key. So again, Control for selecting and Shift for deselecting. And just like this, you can deselect everything. Alright, let's move on. Up here we have the ribbon. As you can see, it contains so many different items and objects and tabs. For example, we have the architecture tab, we have structure, steel, precast, system, and so on. And each tab would contain its particular items. For example, in system, we have HVAC, MEP, fabrication, PNID, mechanical, plumbing, and so on. And each item, or you can say each panel, contains its own particular subcategory items and tools, which we can easily utilize in different parts of our projects. Then in Modify, we would see some modificational tools, which are very useful no matter what your discipline is. And by the way, if we select each item here, we would see this option bar, which contains some specific settings regarding the selected item. Okay, what else? Down here we have the view control bar. You can use its items to control and manage the view that you're currently working on. So again, the current view. So if you go ahead and change something, for example, change the scale in 3D view, nothing would change in your plan. because they are separate views. So again, this is very important. Settings that we have in view control bar are related to the current view. Alright, these were some rudimentary points regarding Revit software.